help women, save lives, and peacefully end abortion where you live.
I can tell you exactly what would happen. The infant would be delivered. The infant would be kept comfortable. The infant would be resuscitated if that's what the mother and the family desired.
You were serious about that?
Be inspired to change hearts and minds by joining over 1 million volunteers taking part in the global movement happening in your neighborhood.
She says, pray that I can get through this abortion. And I said, oh, no. So she went ahead and went into the abortion clinic. And she just came out. She told us, I'm not going to get the abortion. We just had a baby saved. We had a baby saved in Memphis today. Praise the Lord.
This is the 40 Days for Life podcast with your host, Sean Carney.
Hello, and thank you for joining us today on the 40 Days for Life podcast. I'm Sean Carney, the president of 40 Days for Life, and your host for this podcast, which is dedicated to helping you end abortion where you live. It has been, hard to believe, 5 years since the release of Unplanned, the movie.
Abby Johnson is in the other room. Here.
The story of Abby Johnson's conversion. Today, we're going to talk about the impact of Unplanned, what it was like going into the movie, the expectations of the opening weekend back in the spring of 2019, and some of the behind-the-scenes things that went into the making of Unplanned. And so Unplanned was, of course, a huge hit, grossing nearly $22 million. It completely over-delivered expectations at the box office, and its claim to fame that it was not a typical, horrible, cheesy Christian movie. And to join me on this 5-year anniversary podcast for Unplanned, somebody who he's not cheesy at all, and that is Mr. Steve Carlin.
Well, happy Easter, Sean.
Happy Easter. I couldn't think of a better introduction. The grape soda must be flowing like wine at your house.
Oh yeah, it's the springs of it. I've got a fountain.
That's just disturbing. Heather, happy Easter.
Happy Easter, Sean.
Happy 5-year anniversary of Unplanned.
It's amazing.
I can't believe it's been 5 years. It's really, we're going to show clips of the movie, throughout this podcast. But, the expectation, I'll just go from my perspective, okay? So Abby writes Unplanned, the book, which in my opinion, sorry to throw us under the bus, but Unplanned, the book is the best pro-life book. If you can give one book to someone who is pro-life, or you can give one book to someone who supports abortion, it needs to be Unplanned. And I've written 4 books, so we'll just throw those under the bus. And the book is, like everything else, the book is better than the movie, but it's different with the movie because they could show the abortion. And This became the abortion movie. And I remember, I think it was 2015, may have been 2014. 2015 is the first time that Chuck and Carrie called me. Chuck and Carrie wrote Unplanned. They produced it. Basically, I think they were coming out of Mass, and in their words, there's some crazy lady gave them Unplanned and was like, you need to make this into a movie, which people just say stuff all the time like that. And they did. They read it, and they said, this really does need to be a movie. They had written God's Not Dead. They had written God's Not Dead 2. I think they wrote God's Not Dead 3. They realized that God was, in fact, never dying. And so they made Unplanned. And in 2014 or 15, they called me, and they're from New York, from New Jersey, and it was Carrie, and he's like, Sean, babe, we're coming to your house. We're going to make Unplanned into a movie. We want to introduce yourselves. We want to interview you and Mary Lise. We want to meet all the kiddies. When someone says kiddies to me, I get very uncomfortable. So, I'm just sitting there going, who is this?
Let's
prank caller.
check these guys.
Totally. One of my drunk buddies from high school, right? It's a prank call. And yet, after some due diligence, I had heard that there maybe be plans to make Unplanned into a movie, but it was like some lunatic telling me. I didn't believe him. So anyways, Chuck and Carrie flew down to my house. They did interview Mary Lisa and I for 6 hours. We gave them Rudy's barbecue, which they loved and talk about to this day. And lo and behold, because of accuracy, they spent 5 years making it, made us part of it. As far as like accuracy, they could have just bought the rights to the movie or to the book and done whatever they want. They didn't. And but going into it, when did you first hear? Because were you living with Abby and Doug at the time?
No.
Okay.
No, they had already, we were all in Austin by that point. But that same trip that Chuck and Carrie came, they then came to Austin to interview all of us.
Because they hadn't interviewed Abby yet.
Right.
And I was like, well, what did Abby say about, they're asking us about different scenes and kind of getting my view or Mary Lisa's view. And then I said, well, what did Abby say about that scene? And they're like, we don't know.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, haven't you talked to her? Like, no, we never met her. And so I was
Right,
like, okay.
They're getting ready to. Yeah, that same trip they came and interviewed us, and it was exciting because I think, like you said, lots of people can be like, "Oh, I'm gonna turn your book into a movie," and it's like, okay, And Abby and Doug, being, who they are, really did not want a movie made about the book unless it was for sure going to be good. Like it was going to be high quality. It wasn't going to be your typical cheesy Christian film. And they also wanted it to be rated R. They did not want it to be.
I did too.
And quite frankly, they would have had more cursing in it if they could have.
There should have been more cursing.
That would have reflected more real life for them.
Inside the abortion industry.
Well, even the conversations between Abby and Doug. I mean, they were way tamed down, in the movie compared to real life. And Doug always made the joke. He's like, I'm not going to be like, well, gosh, golly gee, Abby, like.
Well, and it's like in Saving Private Ryan, the Marines aren't running over the cliff going, shucks, there's Nazis.
Yeah.
Dag nabbit.
Dag nabbit. And I do say that sincerely. I think there should have been more cussing. I think it would have given, number one, you're already R movie because you show an abortion, which I fully agree with. I think besides Abby, I was the only one excited that it was R because then people are going to go see it. The teenagers, you just go to see a movie because it's rated R.
And they thought, no, your primary audience is going to be turned off by this. And I think Abby was like, well, we want it to be broader. We don't want just pro-life Christians to see this film.
Right.
We want lots of people. I was glad because I immediately was like, wait a minute, they're rating it R for incidents of violence.
Yeah.
I was like, so they're admitting abortion is violence.
And abortion
Way
is in
to
fact
shoot
rated R.
themselves in the foot.
Yeah.
Like, let's do it. That's great. What do you think, Steve?
Steve doesn't watch rated R movies.
When did you read the book? Did you read the book right away?
Early on, I read the book, yeah. I thought the book was great. I concur with everything Sean said about it. I think you had asked, like, did I ever think it would become a movie? I can't say I thought much about it, but I think I imagine if it did, it would probably be not even a B movie. It would be some kind of crowd-funded thing with like the aspiring actress who's like a junior in college type of thing. I didn't think we would get what we got, which was a bona fide professional thing. I remember even when we had the opportunity to screen it here in this building before it came out, months before it came out, we kind of looked at each other and were like, hope this is good.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it was, I saw a rough cut Thanksgiving break of 2018. Mm-hmm. Yes. So I went out to Burbank and they said, it was kind of funny because it's like your granny cooking your favorite meal and then she puts it in front of you and you're like about to take a bite and it's like, do you like it? Because Chuck and Carrie are like standing on each side of me and I'm in this like mini theater and the movie starts and Chuck says something about the scene and Carrie says, shut up, Chuck, he lived it. So I'm just like, it's like having the two ants in the room,
The Muppet guys
yakking at each other. And so then they're like, let's get out of here. We're distracted. So they left. And I was able just to sit there and I watched it with Jeff Paradowski, who's the lawyer. He flew out there with me. And I just couldn't believe how good it was. I've admitted this before on the podcast. I don't like Christian movies. I think they're cheesy. They're hokey. They are over-deliver with the like, the good people are over here and nothing's wrong and the bad people are over there and then one bad person comes over and they're good now and we're all happy and the music is just so like, it's not real. And so, it's not like when Rocky lost to Apollo Creed and Rocky won. That was real. It's like Rocky didn't win in the first one. He won in the second one, okay, with the ropes and everything. We all remember that. That's what good movies do. And I really like movies. So I had a little bit of like, they're making Unplanned into a movie. Great.
Right.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, my grandkids are going to laugh at me and Mary Lisa. We're in this thing and it's super cheesy and they're going to be in high school. And I'll be like, I know it's really bad.
We don't talk about that.
Exactly. So I was so pleasantly shocked at how good it was and how well, frankly, it was shot. It's a beautiful movie. The light is great. They did a great job filming. The night scene with the candlelight vigil is awesome. It's just well shot. And Carrie shot it. He said, I'm going to be behind the camera the whole time. And he was, and it's awesome. I mean, they did an absolutely great job as far as the quality, because like a lot of these, well, not a lot of the Christian movies, sometimes they're just boring with no plot, but the story's so good and the book is so good. And you're like, you can't screw this up, It can't be the hokey abortion movie.
I just appreciated how adamant they were at trying to stay as close to the story as they could.
Yeah.
Not really embellishing. And there are a couple of things that were a little bit changed. They kind of had to squish some things together. You're taking 10 years and cramming it into, an hour and 48 minutes. And
they did a good job.
They did a really good job of that. And they, constantly, that scene with the sonogram, they worked on that until Abby was satisfied that that was accurate to what I actually saw. So with the CGI, because obviously there wasn't a real abortion that they formed, they used a real sonogram of a baby around that age, around 12 weeks, and then used CGI to make sure that it looked very authentic as much as it could, which I loved.
And we could still kill that baby with Trump's 16-week abortion ban.
Oh, goodness.
Too soon? Too soon?
No,
Too soon?
no, we got to say these things.
Sorry.
We got to say these things. It's important, and this is why the movie was so powerful, because it showed what's at stake. When you can say, 16 weeks, I don't know, sounds like a good compromise. It's like, you want pepperoni? Can we get, half pepperoni and half sausage? This is not what we're doing when we're talking about abortion. And I think that scene in particular with the ultrasound-guided abortion, it explains the stakes to America in a way that had maybe not been explained since perhaps Bernard Nathanson released The Silent Scream. But a lot more Americans, I think, have seen Unplanned than saw Dr. Nathanson's video.
Yeah. So just for fun, between the time that the book was released and the movie, just for fun, every now and then, Abby and Doug and I, and I'm sure maybe even you guys would say who would play so-and-so if the book was ever made into a movie, right? And so we'd just be thinking up. And so Doug's idea of the perfect person to play Abby would be Tiffany Amber Thiessen.
I don't know who that is.
From Saved by the Bell, Kelly from Saved by the Bell.
She's Kelly Kapowski?
Kelly Kapowski.
Okay.
Or, what's her name? She played
Who's
in
Doug?
Once
Zach
Upon a
Morris?
Time. Not Zach Morris. No, in fact, the funny thing was, even though he'd been too old to play him, the guy who's in, it's sad to say I know this, but the guy who plays the dad in American Pie with the really, really huge eyebrows, I forget. I don't remember that actor's name, but because Doug is very much the eyebrows until Abby started making him.
That's funny.
Trim them, but it was just funny. It was 2 or 3, per person. It was who would play this? Who would play Sean? Who would play?
I was in dread of that. We didn't have those conversations because we were in dread of who would play us, and it's nothing weirder than being portrayed in a movie.
Steve Buscemi for Sean.
Yeah.
Steve, I think.
Mr. Pink.
Okay.
So yeah. Little Reservoir Dogs, shout out. Somebody's going to write in and get mad. Steve Buscemi. So what happened was Carrie texted me one day and said, this is who's playing Mary Lisa, and it was Emma L., who we hadn't heard from high school friends in 15 years. And they saw Unplanned, and they were like, that woman was Mary Lisa.
Yeah.
That was brilliant.
I thought it was pretty accurate.
Emma L. was spot on. Great job. And talked to Mary Lisa a lot about being pregnant, because she's pregnant in part of the movie. Okay, how did you, all that kind of stuff. And what was funny is Mary Lisa was pregnant when Unplanned came out.
Yeah.
And so Emma L. laughed because the first time they called, she's like, "So what was it like back in the day when you were pregnant?" She's like, "A lot like it is now. I'm still pregnant.
Back in the day,
I've been
still
pregnant for a decade." So, so that was funny. So they text me her. Then they text me this dude, and he's like shredded with blonde hair on a beach covered in oil in a bathing suit, like Fabio. And I'm like, oh crap.
Chuck, please don't send me this again.
This is gonna be you, babe. The ladies will love it.
The ladies
And like
will love
I show
Oh
it
my
to
gosh.
Bridget and Bailey because they're like just teenagers. They're like, that guy is way too good looking to play you, Dad. Like this can't happen. And I'm like, I know.
That's how they always do it in the
They
movies.
add
really
like a no
bad.
offense.
No
They didn't even
offense.
add a no offense. They're like, it's identical. I'm like, it's not, and we know that. Okay. So that guy bails and goes to Europe to whatever, marry some queen. And so they get Jared, who's like a normal looking human. And I was very excited about that. And ironically, my brother's name in real life is Jared. So anyways, and Jared did a great job. So we got together. To this day, he's the only person from the entire Unplanned cast I have never met.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the guy that played me. I never
my
met
gosh.
him. It was an ongoing joke. And then when the movie was coming out, we were texting. We were like, we just need to keep the streak going. Like now we can never meet.
Now I don't
Yeah.
want to meet you
And
ever.
yeah,
Stay
so
away.
I met him. I met everybody. I met everybody at different events,
yeah.
March for Life or whatever.
Yeah.
And then I never actually met Jared. But that time period, the book, and then making the movie, as I mentioned, love movies. These people are professional gamblers. I mean, I learned a lot about the movie industry. I learned a lot about making movies. I learned a lot about scripts and how they develop them. And all that was fascinating personally. I thought that was really cool. But the idea, I mean, you have a whole new respect for somebody that just does this and makes it look easy, like Steven Spielberg. I mean, and of course, those are like big box office budgets, but this is gambling. This is like going out into a field and saying, I'm going to dig and I'm going to find oil.
This is like the whole capitalism, socialism debate where they're like,
Yeah.
these people have all, but they're the ones taking the risks.
Yeah.
And you saw the risk being taken firsthand. The movie could have bombed and everybody was out their money. And it wasn't like it was a fundraised project where they sold a bunch of candy bars and had enough to buy the cameras. There were people who were counting on this being a success.
And they weren't going to be able to do it. They were about to cancel the production. And then they got one donor that wired them $1.7 million, and they were able to finish the movie. I mean, all of that stuff, which is just, nerve-wracking throughout the process, is overshadowed by the fact that you're like, in the end, this movie could suck. That's always the risk.
Yeah.
And look at, I was disappointed in Oppenheimer, or some of these other big blockbuster where they just blow it. And you're like, that's always a risk that the movie's going to be terrible. And not just personally, like we're in this really crappy movie and whatever. That's just pride or vanity. But the fact that, boy, if they did this right, this is going to save babies. This is going to convert workers. This is going to bring droves of new people into 40 Days for Life and into the pro-life movement at large. And they've got to get it right. And basically, you're just trusting these New Jersey guys.
This is how you can tell the movie was good and that it was successful and that it was honest, is the crickets that you got from the mainstream media. Because if this movie was a poor movie and if this movie was inaccurate or dishonest, they would have been skewering in every newspaper, every film review site. But instead, they just wanted people not to see it because of the quality and because of the impact that it was capable of making, and in fact did make.
And there were so many networks that refused to run the trailer of the film on their, as a commercial. There was lots of them. It was just really being censored big time. There were some, I did enjoy watching some like physicians, abortion doctors come out and some media sources saying, oh, this movie is such a lie and that's not really what an abortion looks like. And it's like, oh, tell us what an abortion looks like then, please.
Well, what we never got, and I must have said it 100 times during that time period, we never got, I am the head of surgery at Harvard Medical, And here are the 5 medical inaccuracies of the movie Unplanned. Boom, 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 boom. Never saw anything like that.
It was all vague. The ones that came out and said this is medically inaccurate, it was vague. They would not say how it was medically inaccurate.
Or they would say the movie's inaccurate.
Yeah. It's propaganda.
Yeah, they
Debunked.
Debunked. It happened
but
in
they
Bryan,
didn't do it.
Texas, but the court scene was filmed in Oklahoma City. It's that kind of stuff. And that was so good, I think. The R rating was good, even though I know Chuck and Carrie, and they had good reasons, like, this is kind of bad. We need PG-13. But the R rating was good. And then the opening weekend, the only thing that stunk is we had to go against Disney, and you never want to do that. So Dumbo was being released. And Dumbo bombed. And this is even pre-woke 2020 Disney. This is like they're just not doing good. And the headline was phenomenal for the movie. It said, "Unplanned surprises and Dumbo falls short," or "Dumbo bombs," something like that. Dumbo disappoints. Which is a great headline. Dumbo disappoints. He's dumb. So he's going to disappoint.
He's dumb.
Dumbo bombed the SAT. We're all shocked. So, anyways, that was great because that it had this underdog feel. And going into the second weekend, so 40 Days for Life, we bought 400 theaters, which at the time Cinemark said is the largest buyout in the history of film. I think we beat The Passion by like 53 screens.
Wow.
Which you kind of feel bad about. You don't want to beat Jesus.
We beat Jesus.
But we beat The Passion. So our theaters actually started on. We had a few actually Tuesday of the opening week, which you're allowed to do. But then Thursday was our big night. So Thursday, then all the 40 Days for Life leaders get a theater. They're full. The footage is crazy. We'll put that on the screen of like people, that AMC in Dallas, the Megaplex. I don't know if you saw that. It was around the corner of the theater.
Oh, I don't remember
the line
that.
to get into Unplanned, and that
Cool.
AMC was a pain in the rear to work with. Unlike Cinemark, who was fantastic, but AMC, Regal was a huge pain. AMC was okay. They went from like 2 unplanned screens to 10 the opening weekend. It was just awesome, and they were all full. And anyways, that huge rush, and then week number 2, everybody's wound up. The movie's good. People are crying. People are going to confession.
Yeah.
Women are choosing life. That one, there was the opening weekend. A woman is scheduled to have an abortion on Saturday. Her friend's like, no, you can't do it. She's like, can't talk me out of it. And they make a deal like, let's go see that abortion movie, and then you can decide. And they went and saw it on Friday, and then the mom, instead of going in to have the abortion, went and stood outside with the 40 Days for Life volunteered and prayed for an end to abortion. All that was happening in the first weekend. Like basically your little do-gooder points when they were pitching this to investors 5 years earlier, like this is going to happen. It all happened in the opening weekend. And then, of course, we got like 400 more theaters the following week. And I think we hit 1,200 theaters total.
Yeah, and people went to...
1,600, I'm sorry.
In some places flooded the sidewalks, went to go pray. I know in Austin that spring we saw an additional 100 people come to the sidewalk additionally from the previous fall. So we had 100 more volunteers than we did in the fall. Several of them were people who came back who hadn't been to the sidewalk in a while and didn't have like a major reason, like a physical ailment or anything like that kept them from going. They just kind of stopped going, and they were like, well, there's no reason for me not to go. And so they started coming back, and they were like, I've been trained as a sidewalk counselor. I can't believe I'm not utilizing this. I need to be out there. And you heard that from a lot of leaders. A lot of leaders said that really boosted their numbers, and that has that ripple effect. The more people you have praying, the more hours are covered, the more you get to pray and reach out for women, the more women are changing their minds and choosing life, and babies are saved.
The downside of this, the way they had to make the movie, is it's an intense movie and they show an abortion, so it's probably a one and done for most people. Now, the hardcore I had to watch it 38 times because I had to do all these screenings to raise money to pay for our theaters. I didn't really watch it all the way through, obviously. They had given me a Blu-ray early so I could I watched it at home with Mary Lisa the first time, and then we went, or the third time I saw it, and then I hit the road and was raising money. But for most people, you're not going to sit down and watch it a lot.
Right.
It's heavy. It's
Right.
very heavy, and I didn't really recommend it, especially to moms who had just miscarried or moms who had just had an abortion. That was
Right.
kind of obvious. You don't need to see this movie. But the biggest impact were people that were kind of pro-life or maybe had a spouse that was way into it and like, I got to go to the movie, like some of these husbands. And they really were drawn to tears. They got convicted about this. Frankly, a lot of people felt guilty for not doing more before. It definitely has that kind of impact. I think Sound of Freedom has that same impact. I don't think I can watch Sound of Freedom again. I just want to go kill all these sex traffickers. I think they should all get the death penalty, 100%. They can operate in prison. If you can operate in prison and impact the outside world, you don't need to be alive. We need to use that's what the death penalty is for, by definition. So that's kind of a one and done. Unplanned became a one and done because you watch this horrific abortion, and that's like at the beginning of the movie. So you're in.
Yeah.
Then the RU-486 scene happens, and I actually think that that's worse.
Yeah. That's what got it the R rating. I don't know if the first one would have been enough. I'm not sure, but the RU-486 one got it that rating. But even then, Sean, it was a one and done in many ways. I think a lot of people saw it multiple times in the theater because they were evangelizing it. They'd see it, they'd be shocked by it and drawn in by it, and they'd come back with their friends and their family members and whatnot. And I think that led to some repeat viewings that you may not be, hey, Friday night, what do you want to watch? And plug in the Unplanned DVD again, but, week after week. But I think a lot of people did see it multiple times because it was so powerful, those scenes in particular, that they wanted to share that message. Because it's the only way we can talk. We can put out flyers and brochures and books and things like that. But the only way to really understand what that chemical abortion is that film.
Use of the media, like St. John Paul II, encourage people to use that to evangelize. And I think Unplanned really did that. Do you know that for me, there was a moment, so I was grateful. I actually got to go to the Hollywood premiere, and there was 3 movie theaters, and I was in the largest one with I don't remember, 300 people or something like that. So all the actors and actresses were in that one. I'm sitting with Abby and Doug and Kathleen and Mike and Grace, and the first scene comes up. And so what had happened was I had already seen the film, but when I saw it was a rough draft and the sonogram scene wasn't finished yet. So we didn't see anything in that. So seeing at the Hollywood premiere was the very first time I saw that scene. And there was like a moment of panic that I had. This is too much. We can't show this. This is too much for people.
Yeah.
It was just so, and of course, then you're in a theater full of pro-life people. So there's you can hear people crying everywhere, just really upset. And it was like, so I had that moment, and then it was like, this has to be shown to the world. It has to be shown. And there were people that were concerned, like, you need trigger warnings. It's going to really upset a lot of women who have had abortions. It's going to really upset XYZ. And I remember Abby fighting that, saying the movie itself is the trigger warning. Like, the title and the topic is your warning.
Yeah.
It's going to be
if
graphic.
not that, the R rating.
And the R rate, exactly, the R rating. And she goes, if not that, and to her point, and several people were making this point.
That's a really good point.
Yeah, several people were making the point that if you are someone who has had an abortion and you're upset by this film, and you're upset at the people who made it, not upset about abortion itself, then that is a sign to you that you need to seek healing. You need to, because most likely that person hasn't dealt with that and they don't want to deal with that. It's too traumatic. It's too whatever. And I thought that was a good point too. It's like, you don't want to, you can't force people's healing. You can't force that. But if you're going to go to the point of seeing that movie knowing, hey, this is rated R and it's about abortion, then you've got to, that should be a sign that you've got to get help, which is, of course, why they had the resources at the end of the movie. Yeah.
But also, you also kind of want healing. I mean, if you've had an abortion and you have no regrets and you go see Unplanned knowing 10% of what it's about, there's a little bit of subconsciously or not, there's a longing for that. And,
Yeah.
you know, it's just like the guys who are in combat and they either know I don't watch war movies or no, I'll go see it, you know.
I think the thing is that it caught people by surprise because everyone's like, oh, I love Abby Johnson. Like, everybody loves Abby Johnson. And this came out around the same time as Gosnell did. And I think everybody expected Gosnell was going to be the really gritty movie and Unplanned would be like the happy, poppy, pro-life movie. And in reality, like Gosnell, I mean, that's an intense subject, of course, but it wasn't as intense as Unplanned. And I think that's what kind of surprised people.
And that's a great point. So Gosnell came out in November of 18. And then Unplanned comes out 4 or 5 months later at the end of March. Gosnell is good. I recommend Gosnell to a lot of people. Dean Cain's in it. It's good. It's very good. I was frustrated. We helped promote it and all that, but we could not, and 40 Days for Life was a big difference maker in this, but we just couldn't get the grassroots stuff going for Gosnell. I mean, Gosnell didn't do well. I don't know if Gosnell made $2 million, honestly. I'd have to look it up, but you know, Unplanned does $22 million, and
worldwide,
blows the doors off of it. I think 9 opening weekend or 7 opening weekend. Made all its money back in the opening weekend, and I couldn't figure out the Gosnell thing until Unplanned came out. And you're like, because then I thought, is Unplanned going to bomb? Because Gosnell bombed.
Yeah.
And that was sort of our test run of like, hey, do we want to buy all these theaters? But it's the story. Gosnell's a scumbag who's in federal prison and should be. Abby converted.
Yeah.
And it shows that the redemptive part of what we want in a movie.
Yeah.
You know, we really don't want like Rocky Balboa to walk out onto the street after Apollo and rob a liquor store and go to prison. You know, shoot the clerk and go to jail for the rest of his life. That's Gosnell. Gosnell's like, I'm glad they got that guy. He's awful. That was awful. I don't want anything to eat right now. You know,
no.
it's just
The
like,
popcorn sales weren't good either.
Popcorn says, and Unplanned is not a popcorn movie at all. But afterwards it is. Afterwards, the closing scene, they did a great job on that. And that was one of the things they questioned me the most about, was like they kept sending me the ending, you know, and I was like, it was awesome. And I made a few adjustments to a couple of things, but it's so well done at the end. And it has to have this redeeming value. And the problem is with all these Christian movies is that's all it is. It's just like, Billy was really mean. We're picking on these poor movies.
You really are.
Yeah, I know.
They're not all bad. There's some that are good, but
God's Not Dead is just the most predictable. He's a mean atheist professor. Come on. This is what we've got.
but it was higher quality at least.
It was higher quality.
Kevin Sorbo is a higher end actor.
Wasn't
than
he Hercules?
Yeah, he's Hercules.
He should
Yeah,
have stuck to that. But like, you know what I mean. And then the title, God's Not Dead. We're gonna prove it in classes. You know, all that. I get it.
I got sucked into watching that with my family, and at one point I leaned over to Laura and I said, "If this chick gets cured of her cancer, I'm walking out."
Oh my gosh.
I haven't seen it. So
Okay.
I can't. So I am that guy, and Cheryl's gonna watch this. Our sweet Cheryl. You don't like God's Not Dead?
Oh
Cheryl?
my
You're
gosh.
terrible.
Yeah.
And so Cheryl's all like,
She's
God's
gonna
Not
invite
Dead.
you over so you
she
can
saw
watch
God's
it.
Not Dead 7. You know, where they convert the janitor who was an atheist, and so all of that. Yeah, you're sitting there going, like Die Hard has more redeeming value. I mean, they get back together in the end. They're separated. He has to go to the Nakatomi Tower.
Die Hard is more Christian.
The Christmas party is Christmas movie for sure.
Here we go.
Great
again.
bumper sticker. Die Hard's a Christmas movie. I
Yeah.
saw it the other day. And, you know, in the end, they don't get divorced because it's all about the kids.
Yes.
You know, they get back together after he kills Carl, the blonde German terrorist. May he rest in peace. So, you know, it Unplanned, what I'm saying is that they had the redemption, okay? without the cheese.
You've got the cross and the resurrection.
There's a real freaking cross. I mean, when you go through the first abortion, it's a beatdown. That girl has a botched abortion. They're wheeling her around. Great job, by the way. They put the camera on the floor.
Yes.
And the wheelchair and the blood dripping down.
Yeah.
Great scene. Well shot.
Yep.
Totally into it. Tears everywhere. Then you get to the RU486 abortion. Then like Abby and Doug, they have this division, they do a good job of like cutting to their marriage and humanizing them and, all of that. The only thing I didn't like about Unplanned was the tailspin of like of what's his face getting shot. I thought that was a distraction in the movie of Tiller. Tiller gets killed, and that was part of Abby's story, so they included it.
I'm glad they included it.
Okay.
Because that was a very big concern for her.
Yeah.
And it also showed one thing that people credit Unplanned for is really humanizing the abortion workers.
Yes.
Which you haven't really had much of up until this point. And that was part of it, that like, okay, this building that we're in now, that was the former Planned Parenthood, they had bulletproof glass installed. They had,
which we still enjoy today.
right. They had the two entrances. It was, you can only have a swipe key. These were not legitimate fears because of things like Tiller. Now, they weren't legitimate because of us, and they knew that. I mean, that's why they felt so comfortable interacting with us and telling us off and everything. But if you think about that, like, oh, there's an abortionist that just got gunned down at his church. That's scary. And then on top of that, Abby was told to go watch this movie that was made in the 80s that ended with a pro-lifer, which is an oxymoron in this case, bombing an abortion facility. So, and that it's not like that happened from us, and it's not like that happened a lot, but I can understand why they would want to be
no doubt
secured in that. And I think that helped just briefly show that part. It showed, okay, they were scared to go home. Abby ended up having cameras, put at her house after that because of these threats.
Yeah. No, I like it in the story. I thought it was better in the book. I thought it was and maybe it's because her writing and she's like expressing it. And I remember when that happened. I remember when Tiller was killed. It was terrible for all of us.
Yeah, it was not long before she left because I was already working here.
Yeah, it was like Memorial Day weekend.
Yes.
Remember? Okay, so they get all the redemption part in there, but we're gonna cover some of the trivia from Unplanned.
That the original working title was Sean's Not Dead.
Sean's not dead. Sean eventually will be dead. That's the sequel. And then finally, Sean's dead. So this is funny. So Chuck and Carrie come here, and they're taking pictures with their iPhone, and we take them back. I took them back to the surgical room where the abortions and that to this day is as is. And Carrie, who was raised Jewish, his father is still Jewish. He converted to Catholicism. He started weeping in the surgical room, and he said, "This is Auschwitz, and we're going to make this come alive on screen." And originally, they were going to film here, which would have been really cool, but they filmed in Oklahoma because of the tax credits. So they rebuilt this building in
a warehouse,
Stillwater. Mm-hmm. Which they did a great job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was well done.
People come and walk down the hallway and the doors and the door handles, and they're like, "This is like Unplanned the movie,"
Yeah.
And so, but I thought that would they shoot it? And I didn't go to the set, but it was like 6 weeks, 8 weeks they shot it.
It was. I think it ended up being 8 weeks.
Okay.
And it was primarily in Stillwater, Oklahoma. What was cool though was the outside scenes where it showed the prayer volunteers outside of the building or anything that was in the parking lot. That was actually filmed outside of a community center that was a few blocks away from the warehouse where they had the set built of the inside. And that was a pro-life family that owned that community center that basically shut it down for a few days to let them film. And they even built the fence out around it. So that fence wasn't there. They built that fence specifically for the filming of the movie. And then I'm pretty sure they took it down after that. But the fence was very realistic.
Totally realistic.
And considering the parking lot distance from the door and everything was all pretty close to what we really saw out
This
here.
is a good time to watch the YouTube if you just listen to the audio, because we can put these pictures of our fence and how accurate it was in the movie.
The only thing that wasn't accurate was towards like the end of my volunteer time before I started working for the Coalition for Life. They had put this screen up so that we couldn't hand brochures in between the
Abby
fence.
put the screen
Abby
up.
put the screen
It wasn't no they. And then we found these little slits, and we could still slide stuff to people that wanted it.
Found a way around it.
Let's do inaccuracies. People always ask me what's inaccurate about Planned Parenthood. I mean, about Unplanned. And my answer is always very little, and what is inaccurate is minuscule. Let's see.
Trivial, right?
Totally trivial.
Yeah.
Okay, so the biggest...
First off, you're not an abortionist.
Right, I'm not an abortion worker.
That was awful the first time I saw it. It's like Heather's in scrubs working at Planned Parenthood.
But you didn't see it first, right? Murray Lisa caught it and you didn't catch it.
I didn't catch it. I saw it without her. And then when I brought it back, she's like, that's Heather.
So to give a context to that, again, backing up to when Abby thought, if they ever make a movie of my book, she had this idea that would be great, that because at this point she had already started, and then there were none, her ministry to help abortion workers leave. Unfortunately, not every abortion facility has a Coalition for Life nearby, so there wasn't a safe haven for abortion workers to come if they really wanted to take the pro-lifers up on their offer to help them leave. So she started her ministry, and then there were none. What better person to start it than somebody who's been through all that herself? She had these workers. By then, she had probably 100 or so workers that had quit and left the abortion industry, and they had been helping. And she was like, wouldn't it be really cool if our clients, our quitters, as we affectionately call them, were the ones that portrayed the extras praying outside of the facility in the movie, and then all my new pro-life friends that I made, if they were the ones who played the workers inside the facility. So it was like...
Until you walked in our shoes.
So it was like, oh, that would be kind of cool.
That is cool.
She didn't quite get her wish. There weren't any quitters that ended up making it on. Well, I take that back. There weren't any quitters that made it onto the sidewalk. There were some quitters that made it into the movie, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But I did very last minute get to play an extra in the POC lab, which was. It's weird, I know, to say that it sounds weird to say it was fun, but it was only because it was like, I'm never going to get to be in a Hollywood movie ever again. This is cool. I'm going to get to be in a Hollywood movie. Oh, this is weird. I'm playing a tech in a POC lab.
Whenever they make a movie about Steve,
Yeah.
somebody will have to play you.
Oh, yeah,
that would be
for
your
sure.
next opportunity.
Denzel's going to play me.
For sure. There's no doubt.
Denzel.
There's no doubt.
So
That's exactly who came to mind.
Going back to inaccuracy, I would say one of the biggest ones that comes into my mind is you have the scene where Abby's in the conference and her boss is revealing the model of the brand new state-of-the-art Planned Parenthood that's going to be built in Houston, or not built, but remodeled, because it was already it was a bank before that. And everybody's excited about it, and Abby wins this award for Employee of the Year. Now, in reality, Hillary Clinton was with her at a banquet where she was awarded that.
Why
that
would Hillary
Employee of the Year.
refuse to be an Unplanned? She could have played herself.
She could have. So they did not create it to where Abby received that award at a banquet with Hillary Clinton, who also won the Margaret Sanger of the Year award, which is why Hillary Clinton was there. So they just made it to where it was much more low key. Here, Abby, here's your Employee of the Year, like in front of all the employees of Texas, you know.
So she has a picture with Hillary Clinton.
Mm-hmm.
I'm of the firm belief, for the marketing of the movie and for media coverage, they should have CGI'd Ashley, who played Abby, into that photo and shown it in the movie.
Oh.
Like just crossing, like, wasn't this cool? Like she's showing Doug.
Sure.
And you get Hillary Clinton in
That
the
actually would be.
And it's legal because she actually did have a real picture with her at that exact event.
Sure.
And that is on the list of, like, when you're making a movie, you can do 100 things, you can't do 180 things, but that would have been cool. And it would have been pretty easy to do.
Interesting. I hadn't thought about that. Yeah. That
you have
was
fake Abby, Ashley,
yeah,
with Hillary, real Hillary,
yeah, real
gold.
Hillary, you're in this
Throw in
real-life
Bill.
movie.
And Monica. Let's get crazy. Yeah, let's just really up the game. Let's get this rated R thing, to a whole new level. So, okay, that's inaccurate, which is definitely a small deal. Obviously, Mike Lindell did not get a bulldozer out here in East 29th Street and pull the sign down.
Right.
He would have wanted to, though. I
He
think
would
we can
have.
guarantee that.
He would have wanted.
I think he was as excited to film that as he would have been if he were actually here doing that.
That's the only random thing when you're watching this movie and it's really serious, and then you're like, is that the My Pillow
That's
guy?
My Pillow guy,
So
yeah.
That was just kind of like,
It's like if Vince Vaughn pops in there somehow. Like, what?
I think it's worse than that. It's different. It's different than Vince Vaughn. I don't want to use anything. So that the real story is better, which is Jack, wherever he is, a longtime Planned Parenthood volunteer, had to help the sign company tear down the sign, and they couldn't get it down, which is the famous picture that we've always sent of the Planned Parenthood sign kind of coming down. So what happens is Jack, who was an old, ruffled, grouchy Planned Parenthood volunteer, he had to get his saw and help the sign company saw down the Planned Parenthood sign, which we have on film.
Yeah.
Chuck and Carrie almost ended the movie with that footage, which I didn't want. It's too Spike the Football. It was a wrong message. They agreed, but they were entertaining it. So that's kind of cool, they tore down their own sign. We didn't do it. But they were obviously showing how we kind of took the building over and all that. So that was inaccurate. Also, Abby, I call Abby to tell her that Planned Parenthood closed, and the opposite happened. Abby called me and told me that Planned Parenthood closed, which is really cool. And I hope for every pro-lifer one day, their former Planned Parenthood director calls them and tells them that their abortion facility is closing.
Abby and I were in the Capitol when she called you because we were dealing with HB2 in 2013.
This is 13. So I did the mature thing after Abby told me, and I hung up and didn't believe her. And for the first time in my life, I called Planned Parenthood in Houston. I gave them my name and title. I said, this is Sean Carney with 40 Days for Life. Are you finally closing the Bryan location? And the girl said, yes, leave us alone, and hung up.
Wow.
And then I rejoiced.
Wow.
I text Abby, you weren't lying.
Yeah. That's super, like you said, super minuscule difference. But
no, but it's cool. It's a real cool thing. There's one other.
There was another one is Cheryl, the boss, goes out and confronts Abby when she's left and she's on the other side of the fence. That didn't happen in real life. She never saw Abby before the hearing.
Right.
But I thought it was an interesting scene just to kind of set that tone.
Here's a question I have. Because I love the portrayal of the attorney, Jeff Paradowski.
Absolutely.
He's just sitting there with this baseball mitt, throwing the ball into it.
It is
they got a good
oddly
actor for
accurate.
him. Yeah.
It's too accurate.
All right.
It makes me uncomfortable.
That delights me.
So I got to witness Jeff and Kaiser Johnson is the actor's name meet at the Hollywood premiere, and Kaiser had cut his hair since the movie, so it was shorter, just like Jeff's.
Real life.
And they were sitting there laughing, and they were talking. One of his kids with him and his wife, and it was like, this is really weird. They looked a lot alike, which was cool, and they kind of had some of the same mannerisms. But he did. I think a lot of people thought Kaiser did a great job portraying
He did a fantastic
Paradowski.
job. It was unbelievable. Nobody could have done anything better. And one of the things that you just can't get into in the movie that is in the book is Abby was having two workers leave with her, and they had emailed me.
Yeah.
And it was like, Sean, thanks for all your help. Good luck to me. And Planned Parenthood, then they sold Abby out, these two employees.
Yeah.
Because Abby then really left and they really didn't. So then Planned Parenthood put them on the stand to testify against Abby. And they had not revealed they wanted to leave also. Mm-hmm. And of course, they forgot about this paper trail they left.
Yes.
So Paradowski just mopped the floor with these poor people because when the witness came up, the girl, I don't remember her name,
Brittany.
He's like, Abby's your friend, right? And she just broke down crying.
Yeah.
And then he reads the email to me, and Planned Parenthood's lawyers are like...
So did that come out through discovery, or how did...
That came out in the hearing.
Okay. So how did Jeff know that those emails were up there? Okay.
And he's like, they're going to put him on the stand? Well, we're going to do this right here, right now.
Were the Planned Parenthood attorneys just not prepared
Not
for
prepared.
No, and
because
that's
the
the crazy
workers
thing.
didn't tell them, hey, we wanted to leave because they were afraid of getting fired.
The New York Planned Parenthood attorneys that they brought weren't prepared for that.
It was a disaster. And he said, but you wrote Sean Carney and you had moral problems with Planned Parenthood. He said, thanks for all the help. Good luck to me. And he tossed it in front of her and she just started bawling.
And the boss
we recessed.
The boss gets on the stand at a certain point and just like, well, this is all made up. This is all in Abby's head. She's lying about all of this. And they're like, okay, show us how she's lying about this.
They went first.
We have the proof to say otherwise, so why don't you share? And it's like, well, it's all in her head.
And they were smart to leave it out of the movie because then it's a courtroom drama and you don't want to do all that. But if you ever want to read the transcripts, it's very entertaining because Planned Parenthood doesn't go to court and lose, which is what Paradowski and I were frankly worried about. Like, what is Abby not telling us? And that's a huge risk.
Yeah.
Like, we trust you and you trust us, but you were just running a Planned Parenthood 6 weeks ago. So there was always that doubt of like, she did something. There's some, the other shoe's about to drop.
Yeah.
And it never happened. And then those workers, it was bad. We had to, she couldn't breathe. We had to recess.
Do we know what happened to them in real life, after that?
Yeah.
One of them ended up leaving Planned Parenthood and going to work at a local pediatrician office. And we know this because Doug accidentally ran into her at the pediatrician office.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey.
Big gulps, huh? Well, see you later.
Yeah, I don't know what happened to the other one, but I remember, Abby was close to both of them. And it was sad how that ended up working out. But thankfully, she's been able to get other workers to leave.
Yeah.
Do you have any other...
There's no other inaccuracies. I would say something that's really cool, some trivia that's really cool is on the set of Unplanned. So I got to visit the set for about 5 or 6 days while they were filming. And one of the things that they did while we were there was Abby brought in friends. Claire Colwell was there. Rebecca Kiesling. So she brought in Melissa Oden, some of these big pro-life people that travel around the country sharing their stories. She wanted media to interview them and then interview the actors and interview the real life people. So we had this big thing on the Oklahoma State campus, which is where the Texas A&M scenes were filmed, the campus scenes at the college fair, career fair, that sort of thing. So we're in this big room that's got glass windows, glass walls all over on this campus. And Abby gives a speech. Chuck and Carrie get up there and give their speech. And then they're like, okay, we're going to introduce, here's this person, just essentially here media that's here, go at it. So EWTN is there. Some of the Christian outlets were there. And then there were some conservative outlets that were there. And it was really cool. And so we got to learn more about the actors and actresses. So one of the things that, Karen was there and who worked with us here and who also got to witness Abby leaving. And we were just like, what do you think about the movie? As an actor, what do you think about this? Because I'm not naive to think that everybody here is totally sold on the pro-life issue. And how did you get involved? How did Chuck and Carrie approach you? Whatever. So there was lots of cool stuff. But one of them that was really cool was this actress said she actually went into the film pro-choice. And she was kind of a little bit I'm a patient of Planned Parenthood. I don't know. So the more that she's filming, she's like, I don't feel so good about making this movie and still being a patient. So she's talking about it with her husband. And her husband was like, you should stop going to Planned Parenthood. It's not a good place anyway. Don't go there. Don't be a patient there. And she also, now I'm sharing this because she was sharing this with media. She said she was on birth control. And her husband was like, I don't even know why you're on birth control. We want to start a family.
Wow.
And so she got off of birth control because of being in this film. And at the Hollywood premiere, she shows up with a baby bump.
No way.
It was awesome.
That's cool.
It was so cool.
I never heard that story.
Oh, yeah.
That's great.
It was amazing. And then you probably know Sarah Hernandez.
Yes.
Who plays one of the workers, super sweet. She's the young Hispanic woman. And she has this whole thing with Jim Caviezel and how he inspired her because of the passion to live out her Christian faith and be an actor in a way that is pleasing to God. So she was supposed to be on Desperate Housewives. She landed this big role and then walked away from it because of her convictions. And then she met Jim Caviezel and cried and told him, "You're the reason why I'm blah, blah." And he like has this very Jim Caviezel, like he just puts his hand on her shoulder and closes his eyes and stays silent. And he's
He healed her.
"You're the reason why we made, like, this is why we made The Passion," right? And it was like, oh my gosh.
It was all in Aramaic. It was glorious.
So then she was like, "I'm going to work with Chuck and Carrie one day. It's my dream. I'm working in a Christian bookstore right now in New York. I want to get acting roles, and I have a hard time getting them because of my convictions. But one day I'm going to work with Chuck and Carrie." And she's holding up a God's Not Dead DVD in the store at the end of every day. She's like, "You can go back there and ask my former employees every single day. I like raised up the DVD and said, Lord, one of these days I'm going to work with them." And then boom, here she gets this opportunity in Unplanned. And she like, this is one of the biggest roles she's ever played. And it was amazing.
And one of the great things is Chuck and Carrie kept going, and they made Nefarious, which I have not seen.
Oh, you need to see it.
But I know. It was just one of those, like, too many kids at our house. But it's awesome. It did really well. I think it did like $50 million. I mean, it made a lot of money, and it's supposed to be awesome. You don't watch movies?
I haven't seen it yet.
Okay. You haven't seen Braveheart. Well, I'm asking about Nefarious. But yeah, it's they went on to do that. Chuck, shout out to them. I mean, they made this happen. Chuck and Carrie made this happen. There is no doubt. There's no way. Everything was against them. There's so many details that unfortunately kind of get lost. And at the time, it's like, wow, we overcame this and this. But over time, people are like, oh yeah, Unplanned was good. But they had poured so much time, money, risk, family members telling them not to do it for good reasons, and they just went forward out of conviction, and they, for years people will say, you'll reject abortion when you see one. Mm-hmm. I don't believe that ultimately, because otherwise every abortion doctor would be pro-life, but obviously, seeing an abortion the way that they portrayed it did convert people. It made lukewarm people get involved. And it certainly, I think, is a reminder for all of us who are in this movement of just the gravity of what we're dealing with. All this stuff we hear is a load of crap. All the rhetoric, everything boils down to the fact that we want to kill the baby, and the baby must die. And Unplanned highlights that like no other film ever has, probably ever will. And it just reminds us what we're fighting for.
The fruits of it are the proof too, right? Like you can talk about the $20+ million at the box office, which is great, and it's a nice metric, but there are a lot of things that are intangible about this film. I just went, this campaign that we just wrapped up here, I went out to Tucson, Arizona and spoke with the campaign. And I just asked the leaders, like, hey, how do you get involved in 40 Days for Life? We had a lot of years where there was no 40 Days for Life in Tucson. She said, well, I was a pro-choice Christian, and I went with my church to see the movie Unplanned, and I said, okay, I can't be pro-choice anymore, and I've got to find out if this 40 Days for Life thing is real or if it's just something that was in the movie. She found out it was real, and she's led a 40 Days for Life campaign for 5 years now. They've saved babies. They've got great turnout, great participation. And that's just one story. There's so many, we don't know how many lives have been saved from Unplanned, but we know that it's a lot of them, and we don't know how many people are out on the sidewalks because of Unplanned, saving babies, but we know that it's a lot of them because we hear these anecdotes over and over and over and over again.
And I think we would be remiss if we didn't mention also with how powerful it was that in the movie, there were 2 real-life former abortion workers that were in the film. So that first scene, Dr. Tony Levatino, some people know this, some people don't. He's a former late-term abortionist. He performed thousands of abortions in his career. He had a huge conversion, and they wanted to make sure that scene was accurate down to the instruments, down to the attitude that the typical abortionist had and the nurse. And he, of course, just imagine like how difficult that was for him stepping back into that role in a sense. and play acting, that sort of thing. And then the nurse was Julie Wilkinson, who is one of Abby's quitters.
No.
And she worked for
great.
Warren Hearn, who is
worked-
still an abortionist. She worked for him in the 80s.
He's a late-term abortion doctor in Boulder, Colorado. This may sound bad, but like all abortionists are a little out there, but he's crazy. He's his own category. He's the one that like the former workers are like, let's cross the street.
He's
over
like
here.
the Hannibal Lecter type.
He's got a little Hannibal. He's baptizing the aborted babies. He's a professed Lutheran pastor. He's a psychopath.
Oh, gosh.
Okay. And he wants the dead baby to be spiritually united with the living mom. The guy's a lunatic.
He's stepping down. He's like 90 now. He's stepping down and giving way to this new guy who looks like he's 15 years old.
Wow.
He needs to convert.
Yeah.
mean,
yeah. Time is of the essence.
But he has been very outspoken, and it's bad. He's one of the few left, actually, these late-term doctors that will speak out and sort of brag about it and call themselves pastors. He's a big God card guy, Warren Hearn. So anyways, pray for him.
But Julie left that god-awful facility and, had a conversion of heart. And all these years later got connected with Abby's ministry after that. And I actually was on the first healing retreat that Abby had where Julie was there. And she's like one of the sweetest people. She was so grateful. She considered it such a blessing to be able to portray that role in the film because she knew it was going to be
She's the one that
so
says
good.
it's a 12-weeker. Didn't she
It's
say
a
that?
12-weeker.
It's a 12-weeker. She says that in the movie.
And she's like, be still, you want it done, right? And she's like totally accurate to how the women are handled in the exam room. And I just think it's really beautiful. And
I've only known her, obviously, since her conversion. She's been on the podcast.
Yeah.
She's super sweet.
Yeah.
And then in the movie, I'm like,
yeah.
he's mean. Like, take it easy.
As people said about me, what are you doing in the VOC lab?
I know you're mean, but I didn't know Julie was.
It shouldn't be too hard. But okay, probably one of the coolest things about, well, there's so many. I got to watch the very first time I got to watch the draft was at a healing retreat with Abby and with Karen and with a bunch of former workers.
A bunch of former workers.
Yes.
That must have been a tearjerker.
It was powerful. It was a tearjerker, and it was powerful, and it was amazing to be there with them afterwards and reflect on it and talk about what they thought.
That's really powerful.
Oh, it was.
It was hard for me. I was in a private theater in Burbank with Paradowski.
Yeah.
Hardly what you got to witness. That's amazing. I want to close on one last thing, and this is a bit of a rant that bothered me. It bothered me during the movie. I think it's kind of maybe it hasn't passed. I'd have to ask Abby. There was this stupid notion, okay, that for Abby, you got a movie made about you. Must be nice. Look at you.
Yeah.
And I think of all the things with Unplanned, what gets left out, and frankly was my first reaction when I saw it was, does she really want the, number one, she's really putting herself out there.
Yes.
And number two, I'm assuming she's gone deep and she's like, yes, we're going to move forward and this is going to be released. And I couldn't stand I don't think Abby gets enough credit. And people think that that's ridiculous because they're like, well, the movie's about her. She's like this hero and it's all this stuff. And as Abby said one time, I'm like the worst person in the world for 2/3 of the movie. Yeah. And then the last third's like, and she converts and the movie ends. It's not like she's like Superman the whole time. And I have tremendous amount of respect for her, but it really grew when the movie came out because the book is different. A book is very private. People don't read anymore. You really want the book, but this is going to be seen by her enemies, former high school classmates, teachers,
her parents,
grandma.
She was actually very much like, what are my parents going to think?
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. And then all of a sudden, people... Well, I know just from our little rinky-dink parts, people glamorize being portrayed in a movie. They think it's like the coolest thing in the world.
Yeah.
And for her, they're like, oh, this is awesome. And it's like, I don't think this was a mixed road for her.
Yes.
She didn't really enjoy. It wasn't like the book where you're kind of sharing your story and people kind of know you because they read it. This is like massive millions of people going and watching the most horrific sins you've ever committed in your life that you wish you could wipe away, and they're
It's out on
watching it like
display.
one night after another, and
Yeah.
then talking about it on the internet.
Yeah.
This is a book, not a movie, but when Dr. Haywood Robinson put his book out like that week, I said, hey, you excited about your book coming out? And he's like, well,
Yeah.
there's a lot of junk in my life, and I haven't thought about some of it for a long time, and
Wow.
I had to think about it to put this book together.
Yeah, and that's
God bless him.
You should definitely get Scalpel in the Soul if you haven't read it and you enjoy Unplanned. But there are definitely some dark parts to Haywood's book, and you're like, you almost forget that we know him, and he converts. You start to get into this, you're like, what's going to happen to this guy? And that's a sign of a good book. But yeah, kudos to Abby for actually doing it. This could be a made up story that would still kind of be powerful, but not, it just wouldn't have it has to be a true story. But it's hard to do a true story. It's not like she's Sully, where they're like, here's $100 million. We're going to take your story and make you into a hero. Even though a lot of pilots are like, that should have never happened. But you're not supposed to land in a river. So I know a lot of United pilots, and they're not Sully fans. I'm like, what's wrong with you? They're like, there's like 10 things he could have done before that. So I always get a kick out of that.
If you haven't crash landed an airplane in a river, then you can throw the first stone.
My buddy, he's a big 40 Days for Lifer. He's a pilot. He's like, have you ever seen this done? Like this never happens for a reason, because pilots know what they're doing. I'm like, you're anti-Sully? It's not like that. It's not like that. Like this doesn't happen a lot, with workers leave, but not because they witness an abortion and have also had 2 abortions and are also willing to share that. So I think, kudos to her for Chuck and Carrie made it come to life, but her willingness, none of it happens without that. So,
Right.
all right. Please send us your thoughts on Unplanned, your memories. If you have not seen Unplanned, you can watch it. I believe it's still on Amazon Prime. You can get all the bonus scenes if you order the Blu-ray from 40 Days for Life. It's on our store. It's very cheap.
We'll link to it on the show page.
We'll link to it on the show page. Buy your copy. We have some of the last remaining Blu-ray discs. So if you want your copy of Unplanned, you get all the bonus features, which we had a lot of fun with, on the DVD. So be sure to check that out. And if you have not read the book, definitely read the book Unplanned. Give it away. You can get that on our store.
Give it away
as
now.
well. Give it away now. Thank you for
Sorry.
Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Red Hot Chili Peppers. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, that's how we're going to end. Unplanned has a lot of Red Hot Chili Peppers to it. So go watch the movie, read the book. Happy 5-year anniversary to Unplanned. Please rate, review, and share this podcast. We will see you next time. God bless you.